Imagine a city so sacred that the great poet Kalidasa, the Shakespeare of Sanskrit, called it Nagareshu Kanchi, the foremost among all cities on earth. Not Varanasi, not Rome, not Alexandria, Kanchi. But almost nobody outside South India talks about it. And that silence is one of the biggest oversights in the history of human civilization. Because what happened in this one city, tucked between two rivers in Tamil Nadu, changed the entire trajectory of Asian art, religion, philosophy, and architecture. And today I'm going to show you exactly how it happened. We're talking about a city that was already ancient when the Roman Empire was still growing. A place where Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism didn't just coexist. They competed, they debated, and they built some of the most extraordinary structures ever conceived by the human mind. By the end of this video, you'll understand why historians call Kanchipuram the Varanasi of the South, and why that comparison might actually be underselling it. But first, let's go back to the very beginning, because the story of Kanchipuram doesn't start with temples. It starts with a name. In the 2nd century BCE, long before the Pallavas, long before the great dynasties, the Sanskrit grammarian Patanjali mentioned a city called Kanchipuraka in his writings. Around the same time, Tamil Sangam poets were describing a thriving city ruled by a king named Thondaiman Ilandirayan. Merchants were trading, ships were sailing, people were already building. So when someone says Kanchipuram is old, we're not talking centuries old. We're talking 2,500 years of continuous habitation. Let that sink in for a moment. Most nations on Earth haven't existed for half that long. Now here's where it gets interesting. For centuries, Kanchipuram was a significant city, but it was the arrival of one dynasty, one audacious, brilliant, and slightly obsessive dynasty that transformed it from a great city into a legend. The Pallavas. They took control of Kanchipuram around the 3rd century CE, and they made it their imperial capital. And the first thing they did, they looked at the city's old temples, built from timber and brick, and decided that wasn't good enough. Not for eternity. So they turned to stone. Not just any stone, solid granite carved directly from the earth, under the ruler Mahendravarman I, a king who was also a playwright, a poet, and apparently a genius engineer. The Pallavas began a revolution in architecture that the world had never seen before. Mahendravarman left an inscription at a site called Mandagapattu that essentially said, "I built this temple without brick, without timber, without metal, without mortar, just pure rock, hollowed out from living stone." This was negative architecture. Instead of stacking things up, they were digging inward, creating sacred space from the mountain itself. But here's the problem with that approach. You can only go so deep. You can only hollow out so much before the mountain fights back. And the Pallavas knew they needed to go higher. So the next generation of Pallava engineers did something extraordinary. They began carving freestanding structures out of single boulders, what we call the monolithic rathas at Mamallapuram, not as permanent temples, but as scale models. Prototypes. They were testing roof profiles, testing load distribution, testing how to stack tier upon tier of stone without the whole thing collapsing. And when they finally cracked the engineering puzzle, when they figured out how to spread vertical load across wide stone bases, how to interlock dressed stone blocks without mortar, how to create double-walled sanctuaries that carried the weight of multi-story towers, they came back to Kanchipuram and they built the Kalidasa temple. Completed around 720 CE under King Rajasimha, the Kalidasa temple is arguably the most important building in the entire history of South Indian architecture. Not the biggest, not the tallest, but the first large-scale structural stone temple in the Dravidian style. The prototype for everything that came after. The great Chola temples at Thanjavur, the towering Gopurams of Madurai, the magnificent temples of Hampi. It all begins here. And the craftsmanship? The walls are covered in high-relief sculptures of Shiva in his various cosmic forms, dancing, meditating, destroying, creating. Inside the compound walls, 58 individual sub-shrines contain some of the earliest surviving mural paintings in all of Tamil Nadu. A style so close to the Ajanta caves that art historians are still debating the connections. And here's a detail most people miss. The temple was built from sandstone, a softer material than granite. Why? Because the Pallava sculptors wanted to carve more detail, more narrative, more life in the stone. They weren't just building a place of worship, they were writing a story in rock. Now, once you understand what the Kailasanatha represented architecturally, you start to grasp something even bigger about Kanchipuram. This city wasn't just building temples, it was building an entire urban system organized around them. The city was divided into 3 sacred zones. Shiva Kanchi in the west, home to the great Shiva temples. Vishnu Kanchi in the east, centered on the magnificent Varadaraja Perumal complex. And across the Vegavathi River, Jaina Kanchi, a thriving center of Jain scholarship and devotion. 3 religions, 3 zones, 1 city, and at the center of it all, literally the spiritual heart around which almost every other temple in the city orients its entrance tower, was the Kamakshi Amman temple, a goddess seated in a lotus posture, holding a sugarcane bow and flower arrows. The idea was that this goddess was not just the protector of Kanchipuram, she was the cosmic energy that sustained the entire universe, and the city's architects encoded that belief directly into the geometry of the city. But here's something that completely rewrites what most people assume about ancient India. While Kanchipuram was being built into the capital of Hindu kingship, while Shaiva and Vaishnava temples were rising on every corner, the city was simultaneously one of the greatest centers of Buddhist learning in the entire world. The Chinese monk Xuanzang visited Kanchipuram in the 7th century CE and was astonished by what he found. Over 100 Buddhist monasteries, more than 10,000 monks following the Mahayana tradition, a 100-foot stupa that Xuanzang believed was built by Emperor Ashoka himself in the 3rd century BCE. He also described the people of Kanchipuram as honest and truth-loving, people who highly respected learning. And Kanchipuram produced a lineage of Buddhist scholars who quite literally changed the world. Bodhidharma, believed to be the son of a Pallava king of Kanchi, traveled to China and founded Zen Buddhism. The entire tradition of Zen, Japanese tea ceremony, martial arts philosophy, mindfulness culture, traces a line back to this one city in Tamil Nadu. Dharmapala of Kanchi became the abbot of Nalanda University, one of the greatest educational institutions ever built. Buddhaghosa, another Kanchipuram scholar, wrote the Visuddhimagga, one of the most important texts in Theravada Buddhism. One city, multiple world religions, multiple philosophical traditions, all flourishing simultaneously. This is what made Kanchipuram extraordinary, not just the temples, the ideas. Now, let's talk about the temples that survived. Because what stands in Kanchipuram today is not just beautiful, it is mind-bending in scale. The Ekambareswara temple, dedicated to Shiva as the lord of the mango tree, has a southern gateway tower that rises 192 feet into the sky. That's a 19-story building, constructed from interlocking stone in the 16th century by the Vijayanagara Empire. Inside the temple complex, which covers 40 acres, there's a mango tree that temple priests claim is 3,500 years old. Its 4 branches are said to represent the 4 Vedas. Devotees believe the mangoes from each branch taste different. Whether you believe that or not, standing under a tree that may have witnessed the fall of the Roman Empire, the rise of Islam, the Mongol invasions, the Renaissance, and the Industrial Revolution. That's a feeling no textbook can give you. And then there's the Varadaraja Perumal Temple, built atop a hill called Hastagiri. Its 100-pillared hall is decorated with intricately carved stone chains. Entire chains carved from a single stone block, and pillars depicting scenes from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. But the most astonishing story from this temple, it involves a wooden idol hidden underwater. Somewhere beneath the surface of the temple's sacred tank, the Anantha Sarovar, lies the original wooden deity of Varadaraja, carved from a fig tree, kept submerged in a silver casket to protect it from the raids and invasions that have swept through this region across the centuries. And every 40 years, only every 40 years, this idol is brought to the surface for 48 days of public viewing. The last time it happened was 2019. Millions of pilgrims came. People who had waited their entire lifetimes for this moment. Parents who brought children saying, "I saw this when I was a child, and now you will see it too." The next time, around 2059, there are people alive today who will attend twice, and people who will only ever attend once, and people who will never see it at all. That is the kind of city Kanchipuram is. A place where time moves differently, where a 40-year cycle is considered perfectly normal, because the city itself has been operating for 25 centuries. Now, none of this spiritual and architectural greatness happened in a vacuum. The temples of Kanchipuram weren't just places of worship. They were economic engines.